Let's talk about discrimination against Asians. It's been in the news a lot over the last few months. Asians getting beat up, Asians getting attacked across the United States. Some of it is real, I am sure. Some of it is just bogus, like the shooting in Atlanta, I think had nothing to do with hatred of Asians and had everything to do with, a sick individual and his sexual perversions. But, the mainstream media is pounding on this issue of hate against Asians, and you're seeing the same thing. You're seeing the same thing in Congress, right? Congress passed like a bill about hate crimes against Asians, and it passed, and everybody supports this. And again, there's no question in my mind that it is happening. The scale, the hysteria is probably out of proportion. But putting that aside, I think there's a much more concerning discrimination against Asians, racial bias against Asians, and thuggery, really, at the end of the day, against Asians. And that is a growing number of schools around the country who are engaging in policies that, that discriminate against Asians on purpose because they're successful, because they're smart, because they get good grades, because they test well. And I talked, I don't know, about a year ago, maybe less, maybe more, I can't tell anymore, about the Harvard case that went to the courts. I think it's going to go to the Supreme Court, where Harvard is being accused of discriminating against Asians, and the courts ruled against. In other words, the courts ruled for Harvard, against the plaintiffs, and defended the discriminatory policies. Well, George Will has a story in the Washington Post, has a column in the Washington Post that I thought was really good and worth sharing with you. And it's about a school in Virginia. It's a STEM magnet school. I think it's a public school. So this is government, right? And it's got a national reputation for excellence. This is STEM, math, sciences. And this is one of the most respected schools in the country, really, and it is a school that every parent who cares about their kid's education, every parent who cares whose kid is interested in STEM, wants their kid to go to. But the school has a racial diversity problem. The school board has decided. The student body is comprised of 73% Asians, 17.7% whites, 3.3% Hispanic, or Latino, I guess, 1% black, and 6% other, whatever the hell other means, right? I mean, given, now, the problem here is that the county is not 73% Asian. Asians are just excelling above and beyond their representation in the county. In the county, only 20% are Asians. 60% are whites, 17% Hispanic, and 10% black. So of all the groups, the group most oppressed by this are whites. Right? Asians are 20% of the county, 73% of the kids in the school. Now the school uses standardized tests to admit kids. I don't know what tests, I don't know how good the tests are. But this is viewed as a discriminatory policy. Too many Asians are getting into school. Too few whites, Hispanics, and blacks are getting into school. Parents are complaining. We're seeing similar things at top schools in Boston, top schools in New York. Asians are too politically significant in California for this to be an issue there. Although Berkeley has a problem where Asians are way overrepresented in Berkeley, and Berkeley's not happy about that. And of course, the school board is saying, no. This is not about race. This is about standardized tests. We want to use a more holistic metric. We want the student body to be more representative of the community. So we're doing away with standardized testing. And we're going to create this holistic test in order to bring in. The principal of the school regretted that the school is not, quote, more demographically representative of the region. And he vowed to, quote, advance the representative demographics, i.e. whites. You know, the school board spoke of, a member spoke of a culture of Virginia's selective schools being not as healthy as it should be. Not as healthy. Asian, not as healthy. Talk about racism. Another member said TJ's majority Asian American culture is toxic. Toxic. I wonder what these Asian Americans are doing that is toxic. So basically, parents are complaining that their kids can't get in because Asians are raising the standards too high. Because Asian culture, for better or for worse, emphasizes education, emphasizes standardized testing, emphasizes getting good at them. Right. Now, so far, you know, we will see what happens. The courts are not very sympathetic to the school board. The courts see this as the attempt to do away with standardized testing and to reflect the community as overtly racist. The Supreme Court has upheld other cases in which, you know, they would throw out the school board's effort. But we will see. We will see. Now, what is behind this? What is behind this? Well, I think there are a couple of things behind it. One is racism against Asians. A toxic culture? It's exactly what you say about a culture you don't like, that you want suppressed. And of course, this is not new. Remember, the first immigration laws passed in the United States were passed in order to limit immigration from China. In order to restrict Chinese immigration, they were taking away jobs from Irish immigrants, Italian immigrants. And Italian and Irish immigrants were more similar to the locals, so it was okay to restrict them. Chinese were considered impossible of assimilation. They had vile habits. They were swarmed by the thousands to our shores like the frogs of Egypt, is the quote. So there is an element of tribalism, racism, people in the street. It's the same racism that manifests itself in physical violence. Here's manifesting itself in restricting access to elite education from children. From children. Now, I think there's something more going on here, though. Something more woke, if you will. Something more kind of leftist culture. And that is the left's infatuation with egalitarianism. What this really is an attempt to pull down the able, an attempt to penalize success, an attempt to penalize smart people for being smart, Penalize successful people for being successful. Penalize hard work, because that's what the Asians do. They work hard. Penalize studying hard, preparing for tests. It's a hatred, envy, hatred of the good for being the good. A tearing down of all that is successful, good, positive, for the sake of what? For the sake of mediocrity. For the sake of demographic representation. For the sake of the average, the normal, the standard, the fill in the blank. So, the real racism, or not the real racism, because there's racism all over the place, but I would say the scarier racism, the racism that will have a bigger impact on the Asian community than any other form of racism, is the racism of educational institutions to limit access to Asians from the best schools. It is harmful to America, it's harmful to this community, it's harmful to able kids, to successful kids. This is the hatred of the able, the hatred of success, the hatred of the smart. So, just horrific. And you see this in school after school after school. By the way, very similar. These holistic measures are very, very similar to the attempts of Ivy League schools in the early part of the 20th century to exclude Jews. Again, it was about, schools' culture and geographic preferences and demographic representation and, quote, character considerations were all ways in which Ivy League schools restricted Jews, because there was a period where Jews were this dominating admission into Ivy League schools, and that was not acceptable. And therefore they came up with all these criteria that weren't overtly anti-Semitic, but basically that's exactly what they were. All right, so beware of that kind of racism, powerful stuff, dangerous stuff.
And to begin with, I wonder if I can ask you to capsulize, I know this is difficult, can I ask you to capsulize your philosophy? What is Randism?
First of all, I do not call it Randism, and I don't like that name. I call it Objectivism.
All right.
Meaning a philosophy based on objective reality. Now let me explain it as briefly as I can. First, my philosophy is based on the concept that reality exists as an objective absolute, that man's mind, reason, is his means of perceiving it, and that man needs a rational morality. I am primarily the creator of a new code of morality which has so far been believed impossible, namely a morality not based on faith.
On faith?
Not on faith, not on arbitrary whim, not on emotion, not on arbitrary edict, mystical or social, but on reason, a morality which can be proved by means of logic, which can be demonstrated to be true and necessary.
All right, all right.
Now, may I define what my morality is?
All right.
Because this is merely an introduction. My morality is based on man's life as a standard of value. And since man's mind is his basic means of survival, I hold that if man wants to live on earth and to live as a human being, he has to hold reason as an absolute, by which I mean that he has to hold reason as his only guide to action, and that he must live by the independent judgment of his own mind, that his highest moral purpose is the achievement of his own happiness, and that he must not force other people, nor accept their right to force him, that each man must live as an end in himself and follow his own rational self-interest.
May I?
All right, before we go on, reminder, please like the show. We've got 163 live listeners right now, 30 likes. That should be at least 100. I figure at least 100 of you actually like the show. Maybe there are like 60 of the Matthews out there who hate it, but at least the people who are liking it, you know, I want to see a thumbs up. There you go. Start liking it. I want to see that go to 100. All it takes is a click of a thing, whether you're looking at this, and you know, the likes matter. It's not an issue of my ego. It's an issue of the algorithm. The more you like something, the more the algorithm likes it. So, you know, and if you don't like the show, give it a thumbs down. Let's see your actual views being reflected in the likes. But if you like it, don't just sit there. Help get the show promoted. Of course, you should also share, and you can support the show at JeronBrooksShow.com/support, or on Patreon or Subscribestar or Locals. And show your support for the work, for the value, hopefully, you're receiving from this. And of course, don't forget, if you're not a subscriber, even if you just come here to troll, or even if you're here like Matthew to defend Marx, then you should subscribe, because that way you'll know when to show up. You'll know what shows are on, when they're on. You'll get notified, right? So, yes, like, share, subscribe, support. Like, share, subscribe, support. There you go. Easy. Do one or all of those, please.